The four horsemen of the apocalypse. Who are they and what do they portend? Part 1. The opening. Planting the seed of mystery. As the flickering candle casts dancing shadows upon ancient texts, we gather once more to peer into the profound depths of Scripture. There are passages within the Bible that whisper of a time of ultimate reckoning, passages that stir the soul with their vivid, often terrifying imagery. Among these, few have captured the human imagination and human dread quite like the arrival of the four horsemen. Who are these enigmatic figures that burst forth from the pages of Revelation, heralded by the breaking of seals? Are they literal harbingers of destruction, or do they ride as potent symbols, speaking to timeless truths about humanity's journey through history and towards an ultimate destiny? Tonight, by the soft glow of candlelight, we embark on a journey to unravel the identity of these riders and to decipher the profound, often unsettling, messages they bear for us all. Part 2. The Body, a Journey of Deep Discovery. The historical and cultural context. Whispers from Patmos. To truly understand the four horsemen, we must first transport ourselves to the world from which they emerged, the Roman Empire of the late 1st century AD. The Book of Revelation, penned by John while exiled on the island of Patmos, is not merely a prophetic blueprint for the distant future. It is, at its heart, a message of hope and warning to early Christian communities facing intense persecution. Imagine the fear and uncertainty of believers scattered across Asia Minor, confronted by the immense power of Rome, which demanded emperor worship and often saw Christian refusal as sedition. In this crucible of faith and oppression, John's apocalyptic visions served as both a coded critique of contemporary powers and an assurance of God's ultimate sovereignty. The symbolism within Revelation, including the horsemen, would have resonated deeply with a people familiar with imperial conquests, widespread disease, famine, and internal strife. These were not abstract concepts but lived realities, amplified by the anxieties of the age. Decoding the Scripture. The unveiling of the seals. Our primary source for the four horsemen is Revelation chapter 6. John is granted a vision of the Lamb Jesus Christ opening a scroll sealed with 7 seals. Each breaking of the first 4 seals unleashes a distinct horse and rider, each with a specific mandate. The first horseman, the white horse. Revelation 6:1-2 states, I saw when the Lamb opened one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying with a voice like thunder, Come! And I looked, and behold, a white horse. He who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. This first rider is perhaps the most debated. He carries a bow but no arrows, and a crown, Stephanos, typically given to victors. Some interpret this as representing Christ himself, going forth to conquer spiritually. Others see him as a figure of imperial conquest, a victorious general, or even a deceptive force mimicking Christ. The ambiguity invites contemplation. Is this the initial triumph of the gospel, or the deceptive peace that often precedes conflict? The nature of his conquest with a bow but no arrows suggests a triumph achieved, perhaps through cunning or ideology, rather than overt warfare. The second horseman, the red horse. Revelation 6:3-4. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, Come! And another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a large sword. The transition from the white horse to the red is stark and immediate. The red horse, and its rider wielding a large sword, Machira Megale, a sword for slaughter, unequivocally represent warfare and bloodshed. This is not mere skirmish, but the deliberate removal of peace, leading to widespread internecine conflict. It speaks to the human propensity for violence, for turning against one another, a theme tragically constant throughout history. The third horseman, the black horse. Revelation 6:5-6. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature saying, Come! And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." The black horse is a chilling depiction of famine and economic distress. The scales symbolize the meticulous rationing of food and the exorbitant prices. A denarius was a day's wage for a common laborer, paint a picture of widespread poverty where basic sustenance becomes a luxury. The command not to harm the oil and the wine is intriguing. Some scholars suggest this highlights a class divide, where the rich can still afford luxuries while the poor starve. Others believe it signifies a partial famine, severe enough to cause immense suffering but not total annihilation, preserving certain resources for the future. The fourth horseman, the pale horse. Revelation 6-7-8. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, "Come." So I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over a fourth of the earth, to kill with sword, with hunger, with death, and by the beasts of the earth. The final horseman is perhaps the most terrifying. The Greek word for pale, chloros, suggests a ghastly, sickly green, the color of a decomposing corpse. This rider is explicitly named Death, and Hades, the realm of the dead, follows closely behind, scooping up the fallen. This is the culmination of the previous rider's work: war, famine, and disease converging to claim lives. The chilling detail that they have power over a fourth of the earth underscores the scale of this devastation, a terrifying vision of widespread mortality. The hidden theological meaning, the sovereignty amidst chaos. Beyond the visceral imagery, the four horsemen convey profound theological truths. They serve as a powerful reminder that God is sovereign even amidst humanity's most chaotic and destructive periods. These events are not random occurrences but are unleashed by the Lamb, suggesting they are part of a divine plan, or at least permitted within a larger framework of justice and redemption. The horsemen symbolize the consequences of human sin, societal breakdown, and the relentless march of natural calamities that have plagued humanity throughout history. They challenge us to consider the nature of justice and judgment. Are these divine punishments, or are they the natural outcomes of human choices, of our lust for power, our propensity for war, our disregard for justice? Revelation suggests a complex interplay where human actions contribute to suffering, yet God ultimately holds the reins of history. They are a call to spiritual vigilance, reminding us that the world is a stage where good and evil constantly contend, and that believers are called to endure and maintain faith, even when darkness seems to prevail. Controversies and theories. Interpretations across time. The interpretation of the four horsemen has varied significantly across theological traditions and throughout history. Preterism. This view holds that Revelation primarily describes events that were fulfilled in the 1st century AD. From this perspective, the horsemen represented specific historical events or figures relevant to the early Christian audience, such as Roman conquests, famines, or epidemics of that era. Historicism. Historically, many interpreters have seen the horsemen as symbolizing broad periods or movements throughout church history, from the time of John until the return of Christ. For example, the white horse might represent the spread of the gospel, followed by periods of war, famine, and plague. Futurism. This is perhaps the most popular interpretation today, especially in evangelical circles. Futurists believe that the events described in Revelation, including the ride of the horsemen, primarily refer to literal events that will unfold in a future period leading up to the second coming of Christ, often specifically within a great tribulation. Idealism. Symbolism. Many scholars view the horsemen as primarily symbolic representations of timeless principles and ongoing human experiences. They are not necessarily tied to specific historical events or a precise future timeline, but rather depict the recurring cycles of conquest, war, famine, and death that have always afflicted humanity. In this view, they serve as a constant warning and a call to spiritual preparedness, applicable to any generation. These differing perspectives highlight the richness and complexity of apocalyptic literature. They compel us to ask not just what will happen, but what does this mean for us? Now, Part 3, the conclusion, an eternal echo. We have journeyed through the unsettling visions of the four horsemen, from the enigmatic white rider to the terrifying pale horse of death. We have seen them emerge from the tumultuous backdrop of the Roman Empire, decoded their scriptural descriptions, and wrestled with their profound theological implications. They stand as enduring symbols of the forces that have historically brought suffering and destruction to humanity: conquest, war, famine, and pestilence. Yet, the message of Revelation is ultimately one of hope. The horsemen ride under the authority of the Lamb, not in defiance of it. Their appearance, while terrifying, is part of a larger divine narrative that moves towards ultimate justice and the establishment of God's eternal kingdom. Thus, the four horsemen serve not merely as a prophecy of impending doom, but as a potent call to reflection. What choices do we make as individuals and as societies that invite the very calamities they represent? And in the face of such overwhelming forces, where do we find our hope, our resilience, and our ultimate peace? Perhaps the most enduring echo of the horsemen is this: a profound invitation to examine our own hearts and to remember that even in the darkest valleys, the light of divine purpose still